into the camera.
If I find it, do you still want it?
Pass the 5-second rule.
Did it come out of the thing?
Yeah.
Oh, you found it.
That's pop.
Sorry.
Done? Voila.
I'm good.
Festive glasses, Mike. I love these glasses.
Thanks.
I love how seasonal Mike is, where he observes taking out special glasses. I think it was just last week that it became winter enough.
Yep.
I remember the moment Mike said, "Oh, it's winter. Let me get the winter glasses." So we actually had our first drink of these glasses of the year.
Interesting.
Well, I'll have some Val de France if I can. That's Val de France.
You want another glass?
Yeah, I think I'll
Okay.
take a brownie one.
Is that all right, Mike?
Yeah, of
Alright,
course.
so we'll just get started in about 1 minute, and the topic today being rights. So
What does that mean?
the rights of the right variable.
Ah.
But first, I want to just I have something I wanted to talk about with regards to the right variable and just putting it in context. And then if anyone else has any, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to share about the right variable.
Possibly, yeah.
Getting right.
There's a lot of fun puns when you start writing articles about getting it right.
Right.
Okay, well, let's get started. Yeah, we're at 5 after, so I think this is a great time to begin. You're a little bit off screen, Mike, so it's fine if you want to be off screen. It's more just if you want to comment.
When I comment, I'll do this.
Yeah, when you comment, we'll have Mike come in from off screen.
Are these Christmas cookies?
From stage left.
No, there's meat and cheese and some
Christmas
crackers.
meat.
Yeah, that's,
You know, just really take closer to the food.
It's the right's right to wander around and meander and not observe.
He's quad left, okay.
There's no excuse for Johnny.
Okay, if y'all want to have some food here, that is
Okay.
no problem. I mean, you can bring it here, share it with the puddle of generators. Well, no excuse. All right. Well, I think I'm just I'll talk for 5 minutes or so, just a kind of preamble set. An idea I came up with when I was kind of thinking about rightness, and then maybe I'll hand it over to you, James. I'd be curious to hear how you approach rightness in readings or just in general. And then maybe we will hand it over to Rachel, who coined the term rights. And it's so funny, I said I'd make sure to credit her, and she's like, that's a left thing. So it's like, I think one of the themes we're going to have here is that the right variable is so foreign to the left variable world. It's such a new emerging type of awareness that people who are left can even be trying to show, I'll compensate you. Well, okay, the right likes being taken care of, sure, but it's more than that. I will recognize you. Well, yes, but there's a right variable way of doing that, which is the individual, not necessarily. I guess it's all about individuals. So anyway, we will go into all of that, but I guess what I want to say is, just because I assume everyone here is very familiar with right variable, they don't need descriptions of the receptive versus the strategic and so on. What I want to do is I just want to put it in context of the projector and the development of solar plexus awareness, i.e. the nine-centered being. And I want to put it in this context because I think we all understand that there are these new dynamics that have emerged in Homo sapiens transitus that were not there in Homo sapiens sapiens. But what I don't think we necessarily all appreciate is just how generally applied these new emerging trends really are. By that I mean the projector is here for one-on-one interaction. Okay, but we're all in the era of one-on-one interaction. The projector is here to recognize systems and to master these systems. Okay, but we're all being challenged to do that. The projector and so on. And you can think of all these things that are specific to the projector that are also just part of the time. In fact, we thought of a good meme earlier. It would be the game Gen Z or projector. So the meme is basically, we list a bunch of traits and you have to say, is that a Gen Z trait or a projector trait? Not here to work, right? There are all these traits that are sort of...
The Great Resignation.
Yeah, exactly. There are these generalized traits being recognized for for who you are and for your, even the idea of the individuation and so on. So I don't know whether. Okay, it's not interrupting to come in. It is interrupting to stand out there and wave them.
Sorry.
But that's the right's right. The right's right doesn't to not be focused. So welcome. So the theme today is rights. Welcome, Krista, Aaron. Good to have you.
I want to
And
be
so we're going to be
off camera.
talking about. You can sit back here, Krista. If you can go back.
You're actually off there. But
So you can go back there. She likes the
Yeah.
pulls out.
Katie.
Well, now actually you are on camera. You're just over my shoulder. Okay, maybe you prefer the other. I don't know. Well, however it works. But yeah. So the idea is being rights, and I guess I just want to set the context by saying that we are in the era where all of us, even the strategic people, are contending with what it means to share resources, to no longer be able to build our way out of problems, to no longer. I mean, we still have a job to do. It's not like that left variable is done working. We still have more strategic, hierarchical, left brain, however you want to look at it, sequential, linear, and so on. We have all of this. But I mean, you see the narrative of living in a world that is basically exemplifying the right variable themes of receptivity and holistic sort of loss of grand narratives, all of these things. I mean, even the rise of the divine feminine, the rise of and then also with the emotional, because of course right variable awareness is very much related to solar plexus awareness. The right variable in its farthest right of tone 5 and 6 is part of the solar plexus binary. So I think I'll hand it off here, but just kind of setting the stage of, yes, we're talking about rightness, but we're also talking about each and every one of us, even quad left people. And yes, when we talk about projectors, we're talking about a specific subset of the population, but we're also talking about everyone who lives in a world where recognition is important and so on. And each of these, So anyway, I'd like to hand off to James.
Yeah, sure. No, I think that, since the 60s revolution, we're increasingly in a right world. There's more lean back activities. They talk about lean in, lean back, and there's much more lean back activities. And I think it's the tune in, turn on, drop out type of thing. And it really stressed the left-centric world out of the right was characterized as lazy, right, or apathetic, and these kinds of things. And it's actually, it's the new mutation. So I can see more and more evidence and examples of that. As you said, Jonah, it's becoming a more right-centric world gradually. The thing that I usually say, what really jumps out at me is I'm thinking about in the context of the analyst training that I have, and how right-centric people, they have a holistic way of thinking. Right? So it's awkward. It's a challenge for them to kind of analyze parts, right? They're always kind of seeing, their questions and their comments in the training are always like, well, what about this that's connected to that, which is connected to this, They just see the totality of it. And it's like, I've learned, I'm a left-centric being, I have a right brain. I appreciate holistic thinking, but I don't actually have that. I understand the truth of it, and I have to kind of get there by giving myself time to look through all these narrow left fix, my little keyhole perspective with my left mind and my left view. And I add up all of the dots to form the picture, right? So I kind of back into it and I see the truth of it. But I just think that the right-centered being is just naturally grounded in that holism. And Ashley and I were just actually talking about this over a drink before, coming here, and the importance of just, paraphrasing, let me know if I got this wrong, John Martin used to say to you that as a quad right, you just show up to the reading. You're not here to do any preparation beforehand, and just let it get pulled out of you. And I think it really is vulnerable for a right-centered being to do that. And again, I have right-centered students who are so scared of showing up to that reading and not doing hours of preparation. But that's just taxing their brain, It's not playing to their strengths, They need to trust that it's all in there. If they've, if they're present and they're engaged, it's all going in, right? And they just need to trust that. So, yeah, one of the main things I think of is just this fragmented awareness, that can kind of add up the big picture versus this natural, holistic awareness that the right-centered being has.
That's
Yeah.
oh,
Sorry.
please, no,
I
you.
wanted to say, John would go so far as to say, like, if you're preparing in any way before reading, like, cancel the reading. It's like, because you're not being yourself and you're not
Yeah.
being of any value to them. Because you're not being yourself.
And I'll actually say, because I'm a left mind, right brain, I found that I need to do a certain degree of preparation, right? And I've got my scaffolding, my outline, and then I really need the rest of it pulled out of me. So I show up with something, you know, and then I kind of let the conversation, you know, pull out the rest. So, and if I go too far in preparation, I can feel my right brain being taxed, which is one thing I would love to hear from people that are very right-centric, particularly if you have a right brain, is have you noticed overdoing it in analysis, overexerting your intellect, and then seeing the backlash of that? Because this is something that, I mean, it's very easy for a left mind to do this to the right brain, right? Because I show up with focus, you know, in a very like logical, structured thought process and strategic thought process. But, you know, if I spend too much time in analysis in a given day, then I've got a deficit. My brain's kind of like, and it won't slow down for the rest of the night. You know? So have you guys seen that, of just overdoing it? And then you can actually almost feel like the brain being like almost like a muscle, that it feels overexerted and it hurts. And maybe it doesn't slow down. You know, it doesn't feel comfortable to you. Have you seen that?
How I kind of describe it is when people bring me to focus, that's what hurts.
Mm.
You know, that's kind of like the nails on the chalkboard, or like this panic, you know, kind of feeling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I have two things to contribute just to the conversation, and I do think it is interesting. I mean, you can even just see the arrows pointing at each other, where it's kind of like
Right.
this
Almost like a conflict, right?
yeah, this left mind that's like go go go, and the right mind is like wait. Or
Right,
that's
right
you know,
brain,
this, or yeah, sorry, the right brain. So, but the two things I wanted to contribute are one, just in keeping it in the context or adding the context of the general theme. We are in such a quality of life age. We're in an age, I mean, in the Western world since the 50s, but I mean, even going back further, but it's sort of the generalization of a high quality of life. So we're in this idea, I mean, there's an emerging idea of high quality of life. Now, of course, there are negative ways of characterizing this, like privilege and so on, you know, this sort of Western privilege, Eurocentric privilege, things that emerged in the late 1700s, 1800s of the bourgeois and so on. It's also this sort of hedonistic love of life that is part of the experiential. And so I guess the first thing I want to say is just we can make a negative version of it, but everything has a binary, and it's also the right variable awareness itself. Now, a takeaway of that would be, just like if you have your leftness, where you have that leftness, you have to prepare. Where you have that rightness, you have to light some candles. You have to put your feet up. You have to get a massage. You have to relax and give yourself plenty of time and not have that not being forced to focus in some anxious situation or something like that.
Yeah.
So that you can enjoy the actual quality of life. And something you pointed out, Rachel, is that when I record in front of a green screen, like you did one of these fun voices from the Marina skits in front of the green screen, it wasn't. I think this is the first right's right. The right has a right to be comfortable.
Yeah, relaxed and comfortable.
Yeah. So that was the first thing I wanted to say, and then I just had a small point also, which is that when we're talking about the experiential, and you're talking about this big picture, holistic, you can't break it up, you can't really fragment it, or it doesn't work to fragment it, that it's also a very special case. And something Rachel said that really helped me as a very left person understand rightness was just the other day, saying that when she was a server, the other server, who was obviously pretty left, would just do the same pattern every time, or have his sort of routine or pattern, but that she treated each table, each person, and so on, sort of without context, just in a, or in a specific context specific to them, not as, oh, this is another customer, but more these are people, and were they interested in hearing about the special or not? And she actually sold more specials because she only targeted them at the people that were interested, compared to the guy who kind of had his automatic spiel. People didn't like that. So there is this, even themes we find of bespoke culture and custom this, and, you know, custom shampoo. And I remember a few years ago I had a friend, and he works in manufacturing, and said that we're entering the era of mass customization. And I mean, what are these if not metaphors for rightness, which is experiential, so it's about the individual experience, not what that experience has in common with something else.
Yes.
So I just wanted to kind of share those two parts of it.
Something else I've noticed too is like very left people who are not very much in human design, if I have an experience with them where they're basically trying to manipulate me, I can sense it. Like they think I'm just kind of naive or kind of airhead or something, but like I can sense all of it. And it's just funny to me every time because I'm like, you have no idea what I'm picking up on.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
There is an opacity to the right variable. Ross said it was like lecturing to the ocean.
Mm.
So, because they're not pattern matching, whereas our conversation last night, Rachel, was really interesting. She was saying, how do you multitask? Being a generator seems like you're multitasking, because I'd be sitting there and having a conversation and talking and watching a movie and on the computer. And what it actually is that I'm simply moving my awareness to something and checking if it requires my attention or not. The left variable is very economical with its use of, it's very efficient. It's like, I'm not going to use more calories than necessary, so I'm checking if I need to use calories to actually understand something or watch something. It's kind of like, no, nothing's happened. So if I'm listening to a lecture, same deal. I'm like, nothing new. Oh, that's something I haven't heard before.
Yeah.
Let me spin. I will purchase the memory of that particular bit of the lecture by paying attention to it. Then I go back to not paying attention. So it's kind of funny because it can seem, well, it's not like what you would imagine the left variable, but it is.
It's also an action sense trait. It's a continuity with the third line breaking the bond. You break the attention at the level of action sense.
That's a great point. Yeah, and I'm actually not maybe normal. I guess 2/3 of left variable are. I mean, the more common one are not action. They are in the
it just contributes to what you're saying.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, we have 2 quad lefts here, 2 quad rights. I'm not sure you have.
I'm PLL, DRL.
Yeah. So you and I are kind of
similar.
with the quad lefts, we're the ones making sure the lights are on. But how about you?
I have right mind and brain.
Oh, okay. So you have the arrows pointing out. Yeah.
Um,
Oh no. Sorry, the right mind
Yeah,
and brain.
PRL, DRL.
I see the arrow, right? The kind of. So you're a fully right being in a fully left environment. In view, and that's an interesting one too. Of when you like, I really do put a lot more weight on the Sun Earth, and I think we should.
Oh yeah.
I would kind of say, yeah, okay, your left variable does make you part left, but the part of you that's left is the outside. It's the environment you're meant to be in. And there's even stories we can draw from that. Like, I really do see how I watch a ton of movies. You've seen how many movies I watch.
Yeah.
How every sort of narrative has its archetype in some aspect of human design, and even that PRR-DLL could be like a Coming to America narrative or a Fish Out of Water narrative, where you have like a right variable person in this left variable world. I even remember I did a very, I guess, left-centric interpretation of Alice in the classic, I guess it was
Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah, Through the Looking Glass would be the book. And in my analysis, she goes into, it's kind of like the journey of a left person going into a right world.
Yeah.
Well, I have a friend who has right variable mind who said, no, actually it's the opposite. This is how right variable people feel every single day. Like, it's not the story of a left person going into a weird, wacky world. Maybe even you said that, Rachel. Did you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
No.
I guess not. But it was. It was such a reversal, because it's so easy to make the narrative left-centric and say, this is the journey of a young girl who's left and goes into a wacky, mystical world. But my friend was like, no. This is me in the office. Like, all the stuff about there's a rule, and there's a rule about the rule, and the numbers run backwards, and everything's like crazy and bizarre. It's like, it's not like some weird parody alternate world. It's like making a parody of how seriously left variable people take our world.
The Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah, the decimal system. Oh my god, we've been on a Parker Posey kick, and we watched Party Girl, where she has to learn the Dewey Decimal System, and that was totally like right variable girl in a left variable world. So we have the same narrative.
I mean, it's a vulnerable variable you have, right? Because who you meet, right, and who interacts with you can pull you into more focus and more strategy than you're designed for, right? So any of the left elements in a right-centric being, those are the hooks into homogeneity, So for, even if you just had a left environment, people are like, oh, she's really busy, she's really active. This girl can focus, but you're not meant to focus, So it's vulnerable in that sense. Yeah.
Well,
Can I say
we've
something?
been. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know I'm in the back here.
No, that's fine.
But I'm PLLDRR. And for me, the way it feels being left-brained, in a right body, for me, it feels like everybody is trying too hard. You know what I mean? Like, it's like there's so much, like, people, the strategy, the world is so much simpler than we all make it. We make it so difficult when it could actually be so much simpler by just simplifying things. And that's what I believe my left brain is constantly trying to do, simplify things.
Do you have a left brain or mind? I didn't think I caught your
That's
variable.
mine.
No, no.
PLLDRR?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Left mind.
right brain.
Oh.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, left mind, right brain. Yeah. Which we have in
And-
common. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just, often it just feels like things could be so much simpler. We can simplify things. Why are we making things so difficult?
But I do
And-
think the left variable is so utilitarian, so I think we have to be careful when we say simpler, because the way I'm seeing it is when you have the arrows pointing in, you have two obligations. The left mind needs to feel prepared, but the left brain doesn't need to prepare. It needs candles and comfy.
Right brain. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, the right brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
We got, yeah. So, I mean, it is, yeah, like when you say simplify, I think even that needs to be qualified, because like both sides,
candles?
because a quad left person will say, I keep it very simple. And then they just have like a folding chair, in the corner or something. and the rights have a right to be comfortable. So what are some rights? So I guess the rights have the right to keep it simple. Is that one of the rights?
I don't know. I guess.
No, that's a good point.
But yeah, I mean, just hey, and actually, candles and stuff like that are simple. If you have them on hand, you're already prepared.
Well, it is, because it's simpler than I guess simple in the sense of not going to great lengths to prepare and over architect and over engineer everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit like we have a right to come into this not prepared. We have the right to be existential and not have to forecast the future or live in the past and different things like that. Because, I mean, it's funny because we think of the experiential as very past oriented, but I'm a personality sign gate 46. I can tell you that a big part of the experiential is being fully absorbed in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can reflect on the past, and that's what happens when there's an ending. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. After something ends, you have a window to reflect on the past. But when you're in the middle of it, it's not that abstract circuitry. Abstract circuitry isn't like always like, now what does this mean? Now what does that mean? That's much more of a left thing, which would be like a logical thing, trying to apply the same pattern in every situation.
Yeah, circuitry-wise, the abstract is a bit right-centric, right?
Yeah.
You might say.
What do you want?
Yeah. Some of
You
that.
mentioned lack of preparedness. Would that be like a lack of intentionality? So
And that's a question for the right variable people. I mean, we're talking more about. I mean, because you were saying John Martin would tell you like, oh, don't prepare. You don't need to prepare. You just need to. I mean, I
If
guess,
you would say like, if you can't grasp a chart by just looking at it in a single glance, then but you're not doing yourself correctly, basically.
I mean, that's
You
also a
should be able to
splenic
just-
comment.
Yeah, totally. But I also think it just goes to the fact of like not studying, basically. Not like you don't do all this preparation to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think the one nuance. Imagine you're a quad right and you're an emotional triple split like me.
Yeah.
You would need to look at that a little bit.
Yeah,
like,
Or
just
work with someone over time.
take it in a little
Yeah.
bit. But yeah, I understand his
For
point.
me, yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of it too is once I kind of go over something, I don't want to go back. I want to just continue to go forward. So if you look too much at it, you'll grasp it, but you might miss a nuance that it's kind of like beginner's, mastery. Yeah, beginner's mind. Like kind of looking at it first and having the whole experience pulled out of you instead of pulling some of it out yourself and then almost kind of like forgetting about that part.
I think it's a genetic continuity with novice,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that's a really good point, is that when you look at the trajectories, I know we talked about this when I first got back from Alok Diaz's event about a year ago now almost. And I think maybe like at that time, I wasn't explaining it as much, or I'd be curious to hear what you think of it now, James, but he had a really interesting reading of trajectory, which is not something that Bra said at all, but it does make sense in the larger context of emerging rightness of the kind of right world that has to now emerge. And what that was that, and I guess this is the opposite of what you've seen in practice, so I guess this might not be for chart analysis as much as just in an abstract sense. But what he was saying is that left variable, the trajectory simply moves from right to left, and it finishes, right? Like you move from right to left, that everybody kind of moves towards the left, and the left variable is done. And it might take 30 years, say, your first Saturn return or so, you've kind of, and if you think about that narrative, and we'll go through them in a minute to think this through, because then he said the next interesting thing is that the right variable also has a sort of affinity with the late blooming of the sixth line in the tripartite life process, the late blooming of the nine-centered being, period. They emerged at the same time. And he said this is because they have to go through the same right to left trajectory that every left does. Then they have to unlearn it and keep going. So it's not that one goes one way and the other goes the other, it's that they both go the same way and one keeps going back the other way. Now, I know in practice this is the opposite of what you've seen. You've seen children who move from left variable to right variable. And so I do think that we should allow for that observation to be true at one level. But as we know, these concepts are reused across many, many levels. And it does seem that the narrative of everyone being conditioned, for instance, if we think about separatist communalist, all children are basically separatists who have to be socialized and learn how to be communalists. Anti-theist or theist. All children are anti-theist. I mean, I guess at one level you might say, okay, there's a child who's born right variable hope, and they're starting as a theist, and even as a little kid they were talking about theist things and looking for...
So I'll interject here. So one thing is that, so I'm a separatist communalist, right? That's my view, first color survival view. And having my own experience plus what I've tracked is that children who are separatist communalist should not go to public schools, and public schools are pretty traumatizing for them.
Really?
It's too much. And Ra even said, he did speak to this and said, you know, you've got to just do some sort of a homeschooling kind of a thing until this child is ready to be around that many people. And I've definitely really tracked, I've asked in a number of occasions, was public school traumatizing for you? And unanimously, they were like, yes, I was overwhelmed. And we can get to that from other things in the chart, and I've tried to exclude different variables that could get there too, like an undefined spleen, could be overwhelmed. But,
Yeah.
so I want to make that point. The other thing I would make is that I'm not sure if this is what Alok is saying, but when you look at the weird keynotes for leader to follower or conditioner to conditioned and things like that, what that means, there is only a conditioner. There is only a leader, right? There is only a master. It's just that the mastership, the leadership, right, the conditioner is conditioned upon the social interaction that the right-centered being needs to have, right? In other words, so their leadership is pulled out. Their ability to condition you is pulled out. Their mastery is pulled out. So they can't show up and deliberately be the master and be the conditioner, but it gets pulled out of them.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's what Alok is partly pointing at.
Well, partly, but it's also just as simple as reading the keynotes and thinking of childhood to adulthood and pre-1781 when everyone was quad left. So you imagine thousands of years from the very beginning of what education was. Education was, these people are naturally separatists, let's make them into communalists. Let's dress them the same, let's have them all sing the same song, let's have them, do whatever it takes to bring them together so that they won't act out, and sort of disciplinarian, left variable, bring everybody into line. And that is the trajectory of separatist to communalist from time immemorial. We have 90,000 years of making everyone, because think about it, and before 1781, every single person was separatist to communalist. So I do see that now these qualities have changed, such that now that we have the potential for right variable awareness, even someone who's quad left might be starting at the right before arriving at their leftness in a new sense, in a new dimension that we didn't necessarily have before. But to say that the quad left person has a difficult time in schooling is just not really, it's not really, right? If you think about it, right? And every quad left person is not, if they have fear or motivation, or if they have survival view, separatist to communalist.
I think there's so many factors about what can make school overwhelming, obviously.
Sure. No, and I do like that observation though that perhaps.
But it's
now
like scary. I think there's a survival level fear that these people would relate to of like, God, am I safe around all? They're very much as a thought that I can relate to going back of like, am I safe around all these people?
Right, and the separatist is, of course, the one who feels safer on their own, and the communalist safer in crowd. And so it is interesting, like in a desert island situation, the separatist is like, I'm going to go off and take care of myself. The communalist is like, we have to band together. We have to stick together. So, but I guess I'm just saying, okay, that example seems like if we just imagine the entire world being quad left before 1781, every single human being in the entire planet, millions of people, all quad left. Well, obviously there is a mass conditioning, everyone has to follow this sort of rote thing and they all have to kind of get in line. That is the move to the communalist. Similarly, you have to believe in God. You're pagans, you're heathens. Let's move them from anti-theist to theist. And then we can keep going. And even like observed to observer, the right variable, the kids, are kind of the observed. You have to keep an eye on the kids, make sure you watch the kids. You can't trust them to watch others.
But they're very observant too.
Well, they are, and I think that's why we have to understand that we're talking at different levels, and what you've found in your practice is absolutely valid because of the level of the individual chart analysis. We do have to understand these things, but just at a bigger narrative, I think what I was hearing was that everyone is conditioned to be left, and then you kind of get to your 30s and you're like, okay, I know how to get along with people. I'm socialized. I know how to believe what other people believe. I know how to kind of do all that. The left variable is basically done. And it's like, okay, I have succeeded. I have successfully become a competent adult. I am successfully contributing to the totality. I am successfully, working in high-stress jobs like brain surgeons and airline pilots and things that are life and death and police officers. But then the right variable, even though they might end up, quad rights might end up in those jobs, they go, but something's not right. This isn't me. I'm really stressed out by this. This isn't who I am. And they have to kind of then spend the next 20 years going back to the right. And then it's absolutely what you said. They become the master, and then they shed all the baggage and become the master who is also the novice, or who sees with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
They become
People pull out the mastery. Yeah.
Yeah, they develop unique right variable mastery, which I see the novice as kind of the one who has become the master and then left it all behind and is able to unlearn all of the homogenized techniques, but they still had to become the master first in some way. So in a weird way. So I also do see that they maybe in some sense did just move from master to novice, but you can see like even that idea is kind of funny. Like were they just born a master and then they unlearned it by 30, or were they born novice 1, they become master, and then they become novice 2? It's like a spiral. It's like a little loop. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Mike. I know we've talked about this before.
Yeah, that makes sense.
As quad left, okay, yeah. But I mean, I think they're just different levels. So.
Well, yeah, I mean that rightness didn't exist before that, and that and compared to the 6-line thing, and that's like the final stage of that just like didn't exist before.
We have a few comments. Maybe I'll read these too. So, comment from Ricky is she wonders if there's a hierarchy with our right variables, like brain over mind or vice versa. You want to take that question?
My hunch is brain trumps all.
Oh, okay.
Just an impression.
What do you mean? I don't understand the question.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, I mean, if there's a hierarchy in terms of what makes you more right. But see, that's the thing, though, is James then more right? I mean, I guess what it is also is, since I've been studying Steve Rhodes, I like how Steve Rhodes describes...
Well, I mean, if you're right mind, you're more right for the other, versus right brain, it's like your internal experience of being right.
I don't think we necessarily experience our brain, though. I mean, I think the mind
totally,
its own
but the right
interiority.
mind is right for the other, right? Because it's still about outer authority or whatever.
I guess that's a good point. So, yeah, so maybe the right mind is the one that, in one level, at one level.
I mean, I think it's interesting that I'm 3 parts left, and so, you show up and you get, one thing I always say is that when I meet a right mind, I'm meeting spaciousness. When I meet a left mind, I'm meeting focus, and so I bring focus, right? And I can get confused by my own ability to focus and strategize and all these kind of things. But the truth of the matter is that my whole career in corporate America, pre-human design, I basically just channeled stuff. Like I was a creative director that just channeled ideas, and that worked, but I was very annoyed by all the damn processes and, quantify this and all that. I was like, no, I'm going to be really in touch cognition, with the target audience, and I'm just going to channel the idea and the solution that is right for them. And that, it's like Rob calls my variable the mystical core. I had to kind of get in touch with like, okay, despite what's going on in my subjective awareness, I have a different process by which I know things and can provide the outer authority. That's work with the brain. So, yeah.
Well, the other thing, I do think that there is a sort of a flow state and a channeling thing with right variable, but also flow state and channeling existed before 1781. And we have thousands of years of flow state and channeling documented. So it's not.
And that might be
exclusive.
splenic instinct. It could be a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be something else. But I do see what you're saying, and I do notice that the right brain has its own way of organizing information that is opaque to us, but comes up with very different. It's like so dependent on who's around it. Like the kind of things that come out of you are very different if I'm pulling them out or if Mike is pulling them out. So there are these key differences. But what I wanted to add was just the Steve Rhodes perspective. If you take tones 3 and 4 out of it, it gets a lot more interesting because 3 and 4 have a lot of commonalities. And really when you get to tones 5 and 6, it'd be very interesting to do a study of quad rights who only have tones 5 and 6. Right?
Yeah.
That would be very, very interesting.
I want to say, I don't know what this is in response to, but I had an interesting experience where, like, prior to college, I didn't read books. Like, I was not a reader. I learned through people. And then when I went to college, I went to a writing school, like a creative liberal arts thing, and I got really sick. And I think it was all of the reading and the focus that made me so stressed out. I couldn't digest things. I couldn't have coffee. And I was sick for like a decade. And then eventually, now I write, but it's like much more kind of like, telling stories and like reflecting on memories and stuff. Like I have a Substack and stuff, but it's not the focus, like the intellectual focus that I think I was training myself to do in college, and it was really not good for me.
Well, that's a really nice segue into one little contribution I wanted to make from Steve Rhodes, which is if we take tones 3 and 4 out of it, then what we're left with is left variable in its most splenic and right variable in its most solar plexus. And just starting there and thinking about this question of what are the requirements, what are the obligations that I have. The left variable needs to prepare, the right variable needs the right's rights for comfort, and the right's rights for its own timing and for its own and so on. And, but what I wanted to contribute with that is just this idea that if you do have right variable brain system with a left variable mind, that you actually have to tend to that right variable brain. Like you were saying, like if you overuse it as like a muscle where it will then spin out, tending to it. And what Steve Rhodes contributes is that the design side relates more to the body, as we know, and so it's things that you're using your body for and doing with your body, and it's really like it's an interesting thing because you have I'm left mind, left brain, but I have a harder time using my mind in an extremely left way. You have an easier time because you're the splenic binary. I guess I'm almost saying that because I'm in that weird middle one that's almost like part right, I have a harder time turning my mind on to make it work and pushing the button to make it work, whereas you can. But then my brain system is part of the splenic binary. So it is like really ready to just be driven really hard and kind of competitive even, and to try to compete. Like I actually will kind of make it work out sometimes, doing like Sudoku puzzles and doing crosswords and doing it for speed. Like I'll actually do as quickly as possible. It's almost like giving my brain this workout. Whereas for you, but also for my body, I actually think it's not just the brain system, but it's almost like the whole body my body needs to be pushed in competitive ways, and I actually operate better. Whereas your body needs the comforts and the hedonistic pleasures and the feeling tone and the experiential. It's kind of like it'll operate at its 100% capacity when it's been tended to. How is it put in a good mood? What puts it in a good mood? Good meals at nice restaurants and new experiences and things that feel good. So, but if you're not doing that, you can't just like push a button and make yourself work. Like it'll go into protest. It'll start protesting in the way that your body was protesting when it was forced to focus so much. Now, do we have other rights? This is Rachel's brainchild. I want her to do a rights column or something.
At some conference, we have like so much information that was marketed to us that it was just overwhelming to like pick what. I just didn't read any of it because it was just too overwhelming.
The rights right to not read the
like it was just like massive amounts of
the rights
in
for
different
simplicity.
places.
I even
This
felt
is
that a
for
bit
simple.
with the right brain only.
This is the need for simple. This is the need for
exactly.
simple.
Like
the
it
rights
was-
right to not read a text longer
emails.
than
There's
Yeah.
emails. There's Telegram. There was all these like places that things were coming, and it was like.
Where it's like web content best practices, make it scannable.
Yeah.
Sure,
You know?
but some people like to drink a coffee and scroll through and read a newsletter. And,
Yeah.
But no, I see what you're saying. So the rights right for bullet points, the rights right to make it scannable, the rights for
Like entertaining.
entertaining. Well, hey, that hopefully that was. Hopefully it was entertaining. But how about so there's a guy named Gerald Graff, and he defends the idea of the soundbite. He says so many people kind of have this superiority complex around you can't reduce my thought into a simple way of describing it. I think this really is getting at what you were saying about the simple is like the left variable's utilitarian, but the right variable can simplify in the sense that Charles Mingus said it's easy to take something simple and make it complex. It's genius to take something complex and make it simple.
Yeah.
And that's the genius of the right variable is taking the complex and simplifying.
Mark Twain said I would have written a shorter letter if I had more time.
That's a good one. That's a great way of looking at it. Yeah. Well, okay, so we have a few more questions and comments. Christine says it seems like the unconscious internal variable trumps all, so the determination/brain over conscious mind. Well, I mean, that is. I mean, we are studying a design system, and it is about the form, it is about the body, and so on. Ricky Rebel says she is left brain, right mind. So opposite of you, James. She feels herself always asking her brain, what is the point of all this analysis? Do you really need to do all this? It's like, well, it needs to work out. I mean, one of the things is it maybe needs to do Sudoku puzzles, and so your mind can be thinking about something else and kind of, reading a magazine, but then your brain can be like, I don't know how that works, but okay. Christine says she's right brain, left mind, so same deal. No, same as you, James. Her left mind wants to be a strategic heretic of hope, while her right brain wants her to relax, meditate, and allow the investigation to be experiential. Well, getting to the bottom of things comes from the theta waves. So going into theta waves. Yeah, I've wondered about, I have wondered about when you're in trance or you're in a hypnotic state, I guess it's the mind that's hypnotized? Or does the brain itself actually change?
So I think I mentioned this last time briefly, but I was working with this guy, he was just a friend of mine who is really into brainwave stuff, and he hooked me up. And it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we've just been chatting all day, and I'm in like Delta. And he's like, you should be asleep. But I'm not asleep.
So it is the brain system.
My brain
is
just, and it very much, I relate to this idea of just netting stuff in the ether or the collective unconscious or whatever, that's impersonal. It just kind of comes through me. But like,
But you're right or left brain?
Right brained. That's my only right aspect. But I do, my hunch is right brains hang out in theta and delta more. So.
I've done breath work before once, and that was, really profound. I don't know, does that affect the brain?
Breathwork does, because it's bringing oxygen into the brain. I can't do breathwork because I'm a mountain environment, and we shouldn't have that much oxygen going to the brain.
But
Things like psychedelics bring the oxygen out. That can be good for mountain people, but yeah.
I remember experiencing that. I've never experienced this before. Like, I felt like I wasn't separate from anything. That was the effect.
I've had that.
Yeah.
And you only wanted to do it once?
I was invited for a retreat to teach there, and then I was like, okay, so this is one experience. Okay.
But that experience comes and goes on its own terms.
Yeah.
And what does it do for you exactly? It's debatable. Yeah.
It's hard to replicate it by yourself.
It's a nervous system imprint more than anything else, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I do think I love to explore. I love hypnotherapy, and it's interesting that it kind of rose to prominence in our nine-centered era, as even the lefts are being urged to explore these other states of consciousness. There's a comment from Christine that rights have a right to not be categorized or pigeonholed into left strategic delineations. So yeah, I guess not categorized, but there is this simplifying thing, and a category is a simplification. I guess the real question is, are we simplifying based on the patterns of left variable, or is it this work of genius that can simplify and crystallize an essence of something? I don't know. Right?
Yeah,
That's its own.
crystallizing the essence, I think, is a great right attribute. Yeah, I mean, Ashley and I were just talking about how, take a. Well, actually, we didn't talk about this in terms of variable, but I guess it applies. Like, we were talking about how a projector with no motors can really size up a situation, and I think when you add the right centric kind of variable as well, all the more so. They really get the crystallization of that. They just nail it in a sentence. This is what's going on here.
Yeah.
So.
I saw this earlier, and this is Bergson's Introduction to Metaphysics from 1903. This is an edition Mike and I printed up, just kind of as a sample, just to see the how the layout was. And I think Bergson really hits on some key distinctions. And
Was he a healer? Bergson? Was he a healer, Bergson?
No, he was a philosopher. He was a reflector. Really interesting guy. But maybe I'll just read. I'll read a very short part of it. So he starts by saying that there are two ways of approaching things, and the first is from the outside, and the second is from the inside. And the outside is the left, and the inside is the right. Because the inside is really the crystallized essence of the thing, which is the key that unlocks everything about it, and it makes it obvious, simple even, whereas from the outside, it's the million little fragments that you try to reconstitute the picture from. So he says, consider, for example, the movement of an object in space. My perception of the motion will vary from where I am, yada yada. And then he explains how, so when he's talking about an object moving in space, he can either imagine seeing it, this is the left variable way, or he can imagine himself inside the object itself, identifying with the object and moving and having the experience of being that object. But then he goes on, and this is the paragraph that I think is really well written and will give everyone just a nice mental image of how he's describing it here. He says, consider a character whose adventures are related to me in a novel. The author may multiply the traits of his hero's character, may make him speak and act as much as he pleases, but all of this can never be equivalent to the simple and indivisible feeling which I should experience if I were able, for an instant, to identify myself with the person of the hero himself. Out of that indivisible feeling, as from a spring, all the words, gestures, and actions of the man would appear to me to flow naturally. They would no longer be accidents, which added to the idea I'd already formed of the character, continually enriched that idea, but never completed it. Instead, the character would be given to me all at once, in its entirety. The 1,000 incidents which manifest it, instead of adding themselves to the idea and so enriching it, would seem to me, on the contrary, to detach themselves from it, without, however, exhausting it or impoverishing its essence. All the things I am told about the man provide me with so many points of view from which I can observe him. All the traits which describe him, make him known, and so on. He's basically saying these are symbols and points of view that place me outside of the figure. They give me only what he has in common with others, not what belongs to him and to him alone. But that which is properly himself, which constitutes his essence, cannot be perceived from without, being internal by definition. It cannot be expressed by symbols. It is incommensurable with everything else. Description, history, and analysis leave me here in the relative. Coincidence with the person himself would alone give me the absolute. So he calls this the absolute knowledge of knowing that you can only have kind of from the inside.
Right.
And he says the way we get there is through an act of imagination.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting about that is with the left mind and right brain, I relate to wanting to describe things, kind of nail them down with my mind, but I also feel this rebellion from that. I feel the limitation of that. Wait a minute, but that's not the whole story.
It's not the whole story. It's not, and
yeah.
it's kind of like being very left. I can do an imitation of something, a pastiche. I can hear a song and then write a song like it, or watch a movie and write a movie like that movie. But it's so different when, and I think everyone can have this experience, when it clicks, when you actually know something or know someone such that you're no longer, it's almost like we all kind of start from the outside. No matter what our cognition is, no matter what any of this is, we start from the outside. And then if it's worked, we actually get, really it's that word of the year, authenticity. We get the real thing. And once you have the real thing, the real character, you can put that character in any situation. It's like, it's like doing, instead of doing just the Chekhov play, you just play the characters out of Uncle Vanya, and you all sit around in this drawing room and do what those characters would do. That's the right variable exercise, not the rote memorization of the script, but identifying with the interiority of the character such that you can improvise and come up with new things that character would do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, that experience is not something that only right variable people have, but I think if we're going to ask what is the genius of the right variable, it's to be able to take something very complex and then to be able to describe it. I really think it was interesting. Yeah, simplification, keep it simple. I mean, that works on many different levels. And we do have to be careful because it's like simple but not utilitarian. The left variable...
It's not for something explicitly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or simple but not basic. It's like...
Yeah.
It's keep it simple but simplify the
Essential.
complexity... Yeah, in a way that maintains its essence. Keep it essential. That is
Like
really
a symbol is a simple representation of something.
But I don't. But he says. But Bergson says right here, you can't symbolize it. It's outside of symbol. It's incommensurable with anything else. So it's no longer in the area of measurement where we're measuring and comparing. That only shows us what one has in common with the other. But to get at what's unique, that it doesn't have in common with anything.
It's kind of like the sixth line interpretation of the role model, you know.
Right. It's not that they're a role model because they're emulating other role models. It's a
Right.
role model because they're doing something
Themselves.
unique
Right.
that others might emulate, you know, but it's not the other way around. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that was 1903, and I just think that was so prescient of kind of forward looking at where the world was going. And we see it play out in many different areas. I mean, the sciences also have their version of this with the development of quantum physics, which requires holistic approaches. Things break down when you try to isolate them and things like that.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of injustice in the world based on the pathology of the left, right? You know, everything's fragmented. You know, everything is to be controlled and manipulated by the mind and so on. And like we're moving into a more, wait a minute, we're all interconnected. You know, we're a part of nature. We are nature, etc. This kind of a thing.
Absolutely. If anyone has more comments, and of course people remotely are welcome to comment. I see a couple comments from Christine here. She says, Brandy Gilmartin said we also do books by osmosis, just by touching the book or having it nearby, feeling rather than reading it. Well, I love the quote, was it Borges who had a whole thing about how dismal it is to have read all the books in your library. That books are fire, and that when you read it, that you kind of extinguish it. And so, keeping a bookshelf of books you haven't read, it does something for you. It inspires you, and it's exciting. So maybe there is something to that you're getting something from it. And then Christine also says theta taps you into Daisy, while Percy to Desi. Oh, she's making a reference to who's seen Dave Meyers?
Dave
Desi.
Myers, yeah.
Yeah, Desi
Oh, I
is
love
Percy.
that. You sent that to me.
Right.
It's amazing.
Have you seen that? Do you know? Okay, so Dave Meyers has these great characters. He basically calls his personality Percy and his design Desi. And so he'll wear a red shirt and then he'll wear a black shirt. And he'll have himself being the kind of personality like up here and then his designs walking around. If people haven't seen that, look up Neutrino Radio, episode 1, and you'll be introduced to Desi and Percy. So Theta taps you into Desi while Percy takes a nap. Yeah. Ricky says, yowza, when we were talking about the Borges quote. Nancy says, sophisticated simplicity, refined easiness, recognized or recognized recognition. So it's really, yeah. And then also Ricky says, Borges would have loved HD. Yeah, I'm always wondering who these people reincarnate as. I'm like, where are they? They've got to be around somewhere. So. Well, any other rights? Anything that I guess the right for bullet points. I think that is one. The right for high level. The right for don't give me the details. That's something I learned that Rachel will actually totally get the gist of something and actually get it, and then the details. If persisted with, they water it down, they dilute it, they make you think of it again, second guess it, go over it again. It's kind of like, no, I'm only going forward. Don't make me go back. I have no, there's no way to go in reverse. So instead of let me tell you this, the gist of it. Now let's go back over it all again and go over all the details again. That's death. It's like we can't go back. We can only really move forward in experience. It has to do with maybe how experiences themselves only move forward. There's a beginning, middle, and an end, and an instant acceptance of how the experience moves. So it's like that was then, this is now. We can't just channel surf to a different vibe or something. Like there's this sort of almost expectation of the left variable to be able to do things in any order, or to be able to pause things, or to be able to go back over something, or like re-review it, or get it right the second time. The right is like, no, I'm not going to try to do it the second time. That was then, this is now. I mean, there's sort of just a moving forward, and if it's like feeling, and if it feels good, you can get the right variable to, they'll kind of go along with you. But if it doesn't feel good, if it's it's very quality of life. I've noticed that. So my only left placement is in my design, and I've noticed that I really like being around people who know how to have a nice quality of life, because I don't naturally do that, and it doesn't naturally put me in a good mood to do quality of life things. It puts me in a good mood to compete and succeed and win and do all of these kind of left variable things. I'm in a great mood. I'm on the top of the world from having achieved something. But I like to be around. I feel good in environments with people who know how to light the candles and light the incense and make it comfortable. Now, of course, you're quad left and you make things comfortable. We this is Mike now, he's off camera, but anyway. And obviously, you also, I see, Johnny as a quad left. You might not assume he's quad left because he does seem to have a nice quality of life. Well, but yeah, that too. But then here's the thing, like I walked over earlier and he was playing video games and I had a bunch of stuff on the couch because I'm not good at keeping a high quality of life. Like a quality of life is like, keep the couch clear, you can relax on it. I had a bunch of stuff piled up, paperwork and things. And then instead of moving it, he's crouched in front. I mean, even right now, I'm crouched here. I've been crouched here for 10 minutes. I don't naturally think to get comfortable. He's playing a video game crouched.
Squatting
and it's
in front
more
of the
important
TV.
for him to win. He's getting put in a better mood by winning at this game than he would be at being comfortable on the couch. So I sometimes find myself in the most uncomfortable situation, and I'm like, I've been crouching here. I'm not even for those people who can't see, there's no chair here. I've just been crouching here. I'm gonna take my seat again. So, but it's just a funny thing that quality of life is not. It's not just a given. Because you might assume everybody wants to have a nice quality of life. Why would anybody live not having a nice quality of life? You've seen how quad lefts can put up with a lot of things. We can. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously there was quality of life before 1781. It's not that nobody had a good quality of life.
But it was survival first.
Yeah.
Doing well in the material plane.
Yeah. So. Well, any comments, Mike? You've been awfully quiet. I don't know if you have any.
Maybe we don't really know what quality of life is like if we're still unfolding the right variable thing in these in the solar plexus binary. Maybe we've inherited a substandard image of quality of life based on the little bit of ajna that we had access to in the seven-centered world. Because if you think about like images of quality of life in like ancient Persia or ancient Greece or whatever, it is kind of ajna coded in a way that contemporary quality of life isn't. But contemporary quality of life doesn't benefit from all the centuries of tradition to make it as maybe aesthetic or something. And
It was more about, what we considered quality of life then was
Opulence.
showing off,
Yeah.
showing off with symbols of status and power.
Right.
Yeah.
But the status and power is actually, the fourth tone right variable people might still care about that. It seems pretty clear that they do, actually. So that's the other thing, is that the fourth tone is still very status oriented, but a lot of what we're talking about with the right variable really is the fifth and sixth tone. And the fourth tone is like on the way there, but it's kind of like finishing the work of the ajna so we can actually evolutionarily begin in full the work on the solar plexus.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, Mike, that we might still not really have the full images of what a good quality of life is, and so we're still chasing different dreams. The splenic dream of success, the ajna dream of respect, but actually, what is it to feel good? It can feel really good to have the abundance, like we see in Gate 55, of enjoying the birds singing and the sun dappling through. I mean, I love looking at your photos because they're all like really good feeling photos. I mean, I myself am not a feeling person, but I have sixth tone environment, so something in me is comforted by feeling things, and so I do really like those comforts.
Well, it makes me think too of like growing up in Southern California. I grew up in like a very wealthy community, like friends of kids of billionaires and stuff. And I always hated these environments of like super opulence and just the superficial like plastic surgery, and just like I always hated it. And it's just so interesting to like to have grown up in that world of like all this money, and now it's like I have so little money, but like I'm so good at feeling good. Like there's not like a direct correspondence between the two things, you know?
And we looked, and you only have one fourth tone. You're quad right? But then the other,
inner vision.
And you have one fourth tone inner vision, and then the rest are in the fifth or sixth tone.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting to me to see, because there is. I remember you made the solar plexus binary Facebook group. That was really cool. I think that was like the first time in the history of the world that people actually got together in fifth and sixth tone and talked about
In the history of the world.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's the first time.
No, you're right.
It's really nobody else was really doing that, because even the right variable groups weren't differentiating.
We traded a lot of weird stories, that's for sure.
Yeah,
we had a lot of really weird woo-woo stories. I mean, seriously. I mean, I can share a few things. I mean, one thing is that there's a, not a statistically significant sample, but definitely anecdotally, there's a lot of people with feeling cognition that have had weird experiences with electronics and just breaking them when they're around them, or they start working when they're around them, things like that. Like, oh, no one could get the TV to work, and I just walked by it, and all of a sudden it worked. This type of stuff. Yeah. I mean, Peter Berg was struck by lightning twice. I mean, again, outlier incident. But Diana Clark, also feeling cognition, had a lot of weird things with street lights and lights going out, electronics, working, not working. There's all kinds of weird stuff here. And Rock claimed that touch cognition, again, if raised correctly, you can actually move information from a flash drive to a hard drive or vice versa.
That would be,
theoretically.
yeah.
And he very much was like, I know this is going to sound crazy, but this is a thing, So, no one relates to that, of course.
Well, I just watched this great film, Seobok, S-E-O-B-O-K, and it's, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but it's very much, we watched it the other night, it's very much about the rave, except that it has like a moment of like sentimental strings where the previously implacable, unfeeling, kind of new, like emerging human actually does cry and hug with the old human. And so it really is this kind of moment. It's like left variable propaganda. It's like some like propaganda that you could imagine at the time of the Neanderthal, where it's like, no, we aren't killing you. We're good. Look at the Homo sapiens Neanderthal hugging. It's like some propaganda film, but it's great because it shows this new being, and he's made in a lab. So there's this sort of, he's been genetically modified. They're like, is he human? He's not really human, no. And he has all of these kind of qualities about him, but one of them is that he can control electronics, and he can control an atmosphere, and he can, well, not really electronics. He just has some telekinetic powers. It's a really good film, but we were laughing a lot about that, just watching it the other night of how much it was. There's some interesting. It's like we still can't quite imagine what it would be like for somebody to have the pure awareness of the emotional center. We can kind of imagine it. We think we imagine it, and we're like, oh, I felt things. But what about not? I mean, I like how Ra put it. He's like, can you imagine if the words mother and father were meaningless, or husband or wife? Like if these words lost all meaning, like someone who like literally didn't make, it just didn't, they don't understand. Like, what does that word even mean? It doesn't have any. Your mother is no different than any other person. That would be stopping the emotional wave. And so his dark sense of humor was kind of like, people want world peace. Oh, they'll get it when the wave stops. I mean, we won't ever really get it because we're not going to be around long enough for the wave to ever really fully stop in the humans. But I mean, the potential of world peace, sure, it's a completely flat wave. There's no longer any pleasure, there's no longer any pain, there's no longer any romance, there's no longer any happiness or sadness. It's a completely gray world.
We're very much in this crossover between ajna and solar plexus binary, and you can see that we still need the ajna binary to like define things and say, well, here's what you're experiencing right now, so you can understand that, right? And then you just need to be with it. That's the solar plexus binary.
That's the
But
solar
at first,
plexus.
it's good to say like, here's the diagnosis of what's actually happening, biologically or psychologically or whatever. And so we're in that weird,
We still have to conceptualize it. It actually reminds me of what Carl Jung said, where he talked about the 3 phases of development and individuation, where you learn something new and the first phase is the confusion, the second phase is the clarity that comes out of having the words to talk about it. But then the third phase fills it with the lifeblood of actual lived life experience. And it's not enough to only understand it. You have to then live it. And you have to then experience it. So there's this movement.
Yeah.
Right, we're kind of right in that albedo phase where we've had the enlightenment, but we're moving into the rubedo. A couple more comments here. So, oh no, these are the same comments. Okay, well, anyone have anything else they want to talk about? We're at about an hour. If we do want to, wrap up early-ish, or if we want to open it up a little more, I'm happy to talk more about rights. I love this idea of like rights that people don't necessarily think of as rights, that are rights that are overlooked. There's a really good. Okay, so who here knows Friedrich Hundertswasser? Hundertswasser? You know him. Okay, Mike knows him. See, people. These are not like unknown people. Hundertswasser was a fantastic architect, painter, nudist, kind of an anarchist in a way. He wrote this great short essay. It's only about a page, and it's called "On Window Apartheid and Window Rights," I believe, or just "On Windows Rights." Do you remember that one? And he's talking about in architecture how different buildings are coded so that you can only have modern windows by them, and only Baroque windows and only Victorian windows, and they're all kept apart. I think on window segregation and window rights. That's what he called it. That is literally the essay title, and he's arguing for the right to have windows coexist on the same building that aren't from the same thing. All right, you have the right to leave. Well, everyone does, thankfully. Yeah, thanks for being here. I appreciate having you. But I mean, I do think even he, I don't know if he was right variable, but he was basically arguing for the right for using the right window regardless of what they say the window you can or can't use or what category it belongs to. It's like, let me use the right window for this wall. And who are you to say I can't put a Baroque window here because that's a modern window there?
Right.
It's kind of this right to use the right tool for the job or to treat something as a special case scenario, not to the right not to follow the pattern. I mean,
and for the positioning, right? Because isn't part of it like to follow the light? It's like you might have a window here and then a window like offset from it, depending on how the building's constructed. So it's like sort of a right for there to be disorder among the windows, not just stylistically, but
to not make them all go in a line.
Exactly, because that's what we're used to. It's like window.
Right, but he would actually have the windows at different areas. And I mean, even for me as like 846, there's such a conundrum where okay. Sorry, Johnny's off screen crinkling. He's like a cat. Just open it, Johnny. He's like crinkling bags of chips. Now he's gonna be eating the chips. And that's gonna be such a cat.
We've all got solar plexus on the brain now. We all want to feel good.
This is a left variable. No, this is a left variable right. I have the right to eat when I'm hungry. I have the right to survive based on what I can forage and find. He's literally, people can't see Johnny, but he's like literally off screen. Okay, there we go. But I do, just this idea of the right to use the right tool for the job or to not have to follow the pattern. For me as a Gate 46 personality son, I very much identify with the conundrum of having a pattern of success and then suffering from getting locked into having to repeat that success. It's like death for the abstract being is when they commit to follow the pattern, when they commit to repeat the pattern. And it's kind of like, okay, we had some very successful HD events. We're going to do it again? Well, we got to do it new. We can't just do it again because I'm not going to follow the pattern of last year because I will die inside. There is this sort of conundrum, and I do think that there's.
And that's interesting
a lot
too
there.
because you have the logical format. So there must be some degree of an inner dialogue around that with you.
Yeah, but the way I see it is because my personality sign is gate 46, it has to, I mean, part of my purpose is really fulfilled through having these new experiences, and what do I bring to those experiences? The perseverance and the determination to sit in stillness and focus until it resolves, or to get, to break through any barriers that come up through diligent effort and all of that 952 stuff. It's like that's supporting me. I get stuck, that's there to get me unstuck so I can keep going in the experience. But I mean, being a gate 46, there is that, I think all gate 46s have this conundrum of they achieve success and then they get locked into what brought them success. Everyone's telling them, keep doing it. And they don't necessarily want to keep doing it because they're here to be experiential. They'll do it until the end. And when it's done, they're not going to do it again. They're going to do something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 5 and 6 tones for Steve Rhodes, they're the mood setter. You know, any tone is the mood setter, and the mood setter for them is feeling good, really having something to savor. I don't know if he uses that terminology, but that's how it's evolved in my life. Something to really appreciate. The fact that a 5th or 6th tone person can be fired from their job, and if the sandwich is tasty enough that they eat after they're fired, they feel good about their day again. They can really sink into the sandwich, or the beautiful view, or the art museum, or whatever it is. So what I'm trying to reconcile is my own leftness take on that, because I forget exactly how Steve Rhodes presented it, but it sounds very strategic. Just the idea of there being a mood setter sounds like a life hack. It sounds like a input-output result. Here's what even a non-strategic right person can do to fix their mood, right?
Well, I think causality is not strategic. Strategic is, yeah. I mean, if you're gonna sell a book or read a book of here's things I can do to fix my mood,
Right.
But cause and effect.
But it's not a protocol to find something to appreciate to fix your mood.
Well, I don't
Sounds
necessarily
intentional.
like.
yeah, I mean, it might be something you just stumble upon that you don't even know that would fix your
Yeah,
mood.
there you
But
go.
it's not that quad right can have no intentionality. I mean, so I had a quad right partner for 10 years. You were good friends with her as well, Yuriko. And having witnessed how the quad right works, and of course she wasn't into human design, but she was very spiritually developed and taught me so much and so on, and very tuned in with herself. And I mean, much of the stuff operates, whether you're so-called in your experiment or not. I mean, it's just operating because it might not be operating well. It might be beating yourself up about it or something. But this is, and a lot of that potential won't be tapped, but it's still there. And so anyway, what I observed was that she definitely knew what would put her in a good mood, and when something stressful would happen, she would immediately do things that would make her relaxed and happy. And because she was really good at now, there's no guarantee that someone's going to be good at monitoring their mood. This is just something of some people know what puts them in a good mood, and others are still learning that, and they're having a hard time doing that. But she knew what put her in a good mood, and it wasn't strategic. It wasn't like she was always looking for that thing that would put her in a good mood. It's just that she knew what to do, and she just did it. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
She would lean into what was pleasurable. That she
Yeah, she would say, these lights are too bright, and turn down the bright. I mean, it just was automatic. It wasn't
I get it.
contrived.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was spontaneously making things nicer and more
right.
comfortable, and just knowing how to kind of make places more relaxing and things like that. It's far too bright, or I'm in the mood to watch this, or I'm in the mood to do that. So, yeah, that is a good point. That kind of the way he describes it. If you're in a bad mood, follow these 3 simple steps. So, but it is an interesting thing. I like that Steve Rhodes at least talks about mood. We have to be a little careful because obviously there's the melancholic mood where it's almost your life force energy needs something to match that mood. And if it doesn't get that, it's going to wither and die inside. So you have 360 and you're in the mood to listen to noise music, or you have just even a transit is going by and you're in the mood to listen to a certain genre or eat a certain food or go to a certain place or look at old photos or who knows. I mean, any of these things. There's moods that you can be in that require matching. And it's not just like, oh, I need a sandwich, I'm in a bad
Right.
mood.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's that.
That circuitry mood, individual mood, definition mood is such content, it's such substance. It's like liquid or something.
Substantive mood.
And when we're talking about tone, it's like it's almost like we're talking about the infrastructure, the pipes or whatever that it's flowing through, you know. And so the bad mood that comes from that is really just the filter not being clean or whatever, the design not being.
It's
coherent,
almost like
psyche
the
not being
attitude. It's almost
coherent.
like, I would almost say that the, and this is so distracting. I can't believe that Johnny's chewing so loud. You guys can all hear this. I know you can hear it. I know you can hear Johnny's chewing. So, yeah.
This is a commercial for Benny Day tortilla chip.
He really likes the chips. He's just, so it's not over.
Innocence.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. He's not involved. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm in the mood for chips.
But I almost think it's the way Jung uses the term attitude is similar to how Steve Rhodes uses mood, because the attitude is like the mood of awareness, or it's even your attitude in the sense that if you have it's like I can be dealing with an individual transit and very melancholy, and I can have a good attitude about being melancholy, which is okay. I'm going to cancel my plans today and I'm just going to go for a walk. That's a good, healthy attitude. Or I can have a really destructive attitude of like, screw everything, I'm going to throw this away, and I hate this. And what determines that is really what he's calling the mood setter, is whether I'm able to be content with my bad mood, or whether I'm fighting and struggling against it and gnashing my teeth at it. So, I mean, I think we can still use the term mood, just with the caveat that when we're talking about the mood at the surface, that's the life force energy. When we're talking at the level of tone, that is the awareness.
Yeah.
And it's something kind of like an attitude.
Right. It is like resonance or coherence or something.
Yeah, maybe there's other terms for it. But, so there is a question from Ricky, and then this might be a good kind of final thing to kind of wrap up on, was about the nodes. And so we've talked a lot about the left and right at the level of Sun Earth, but just at the nodes. And I guess maybe if there's just any parting, I mean, we touched on it a little bit, where it's like you're an all right girl in an all left world kind of thing. But I mean, there's probably some other maybe a few, maybe just even some kind of high level of like, if you're approaching a reading, what do you tell somebody who, like me, who's all left except for my right environment?
You're a couch potato.
I am. You've seen it.
No, it literally.
I literally
Rock calls that variable the couch potato.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
I see why. Because
My ex-girlfriend had that too, and so she's the 3420, so super busy and all that stuff, but really needs a lot of sedentary time.
Yeah. No, it's true. I actually get back to my comfort place.
Yeah.
And kind of
I see it like
much, yeah.
centers you or resets. I don't know how you
Yeah. No, it
describe it.
absolutely is.
It's
Yeah.
grounding. It's healthy.
Yeah, and having something to watch, and
Yeah.
I mean, I
Even
like
doing
it.
this kind of thing, sitting down is better for you than standing. Like for me, I'm gonna pace. I'm gonna pace around. You've seen me do that. You know, I pace
true.
around when I'm talking.
So does Mike. Mike will do really good readings, and so does Johnny. And so that left.
moving right now.
You need a certain amount of movement. Yeah, he's literally.
We're getting antsy. Left is getting antsy.
Yeah, the left's
The other
getting
one's
antsy
like
like
this.
this, too, so,
Yeah, it's dark,
Stinging,
I'm sleepy.
Well, maybe that's a good last question of just kind of ending there with the nodes, and maybe I guess just the personality nodes. Is there anyone here that has right variable? Obviously the quadrants, but
Yeah.
that have right variable on the personality? I guess not. That was Ra's only right variable placement. And he said how lucky he felt having that,
Yeah.
because he got to see things nobody else saw.
Sure.
And stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Tuned him into the coming mutation. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I know just from you talking about like grocery shopping or something, that you'll often notice things out of your peripheral vision, literally, and your awareness kind of being diffuse can take it in, and then you will turn to what you need to get because it's noticed something that maybe you didn't even notice in a way. It's almost like how to use your unconscious to make it work for you, or something like that. How to make it, maybe not work is not the right way, but just, how to allow your diffuse consciousness to notice something nobody else sees. And I have my tunnel vision blinders on. I'm like, okay, here's my list of things to get. I gotta get this, I gotta get that. And you're kind of just walking, and then you just notice something out of peripheral vision, and it happens to be the thing you need.
Yeah, or if I'm looking for something, like say in my house, not at the grocery store, I will be like, okay, I'm looking for this, and then I'll just find myself kind of gazing in the direction that my body will find it, you know.
Mm.
I
Interesting.
do that. I can find missing objects.
Yeah.
I'll literally just ask, where is this? And then I'll just get up and start walking
Towards it.
toward it.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I've been able to repeat it
Yeah.
over and over again.
Mm.
I have a pretty good sense of objects too. I mean, I was calling it my right variable practice the other day. It was like in the dark, and I was doing all these things completely, you know, in the dark. But so there is something to that. But I also just think it's letting the vice grip of the awareness become diffuse, and trusting that when it's diffuse, it can take in something.
Mhm.
Like I've had this experience. I almost wonder if sometimes the left variable actually does experience the right variable, but it's under hypnosis, or it's in some sort of dream state, or it's in, you know, like we get glimpses of it. And in a trance state where normally my kind of awareness focuses on different things and notices little details, suddenly it's almost like my peripheral vision doesn't exist, or it's just as clear as my I've had that experience before, and so it's definitely
Well, maybe you unify with the environment through focus, and you unify through peripheral. You know what I mean? It's a different way to just kind of get immersed and enter into a bigger milieu. You know?
yeah. Well, that is a good point, because I definitely, when I notice things, I'm scanning and noticing what doesn't fit the pattern, and I'm noticing details. And I'm like,
Totally,
oh, this
yeah.
person had this, and that did that, and that happened. And I have my list of details, so I know that I'm not taking things in holistically. But sometimes it's been a long time, but I've just had the experience of under trance state or different altered states of consciousness, of kind of seeing the world a very different way, and then kind of snapping out of it and sobering up and waking up
Sure.
back to my normal mode and being like, was that, you know, what was that? It's almost like being in a trance state, or again being in delta or theta.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting what you were saying about the brain waves. I mean, it makes sense that they are on the design side. So
Yeah.
it's almost the
Yeah.
mind is kind of this hummingbird hovering on top of
Right.
of the brain system,
Yeah.
which might be in a deeper state. So, well, really lovely conversation. I think we had some really interesting approaches here. I really love talking about this. Any final comments? Anything anyone wants to discuss? Okay.
I
Well,
feel good.
yeah. No, I'm really excited that this has been going so well. And thanks again, Mike, for hosting such a wonderful time.
And
everybody
lighting
remotely.
incense for us
Yeah.
before we got here.
Yeah, making it right variable friendly. So, yes. Okay, well,
Good to
till-
see you
till
all.
Next time. So next week we'll likely do Tuesday, I guess, instead of it's Christmas Day Monday.
Oh, okay, cool.
So likely Tuesday, or if it changes to a different day,
Great.
We'll let you
Yeah.
know what's that. So. Excellent. Okay, take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Eat with you next week.